Gentry, how you doing?
Good morning.
Morning. Good to be with you guys.
Yep.
Appreciate you being on. I'm going to ask you about Louisville's defense to start with because they've got a new defensive coordinator, and they haven't been as good on that side of the football as they generally. It's pretty tricky on the offensive side. Can they do anything at all defensively against Alabama?
I think that's a big question. Last year was not up to standard defensively. They brought in a new coordinator from Mississippi State, Peter Sermon, for 1 year. And defensively, they were a mess for a lot of the year. It was the real liability. Now, they had when you have Lamar Jackson at quarterback, you've got an offense that's going to score a lot of points and not hold the ball very long. So they asked the defense to be out there quite a bit, and it didn't go very well. They weren't very good against the run. They had a first-round cornerback named Jair Alexander who ended up leaving, and he was only on the field about half the time last year. He was injured, and it was kind of night in the secondary for when he was there. So now they don't have him, and you bring in a new coordinator, and Brian Van Gorder, who I know a lot of people down there are familiar with, and it'll be interesting to see. I think he's bringing in a new system. You've got a lot of players who haven't either played a lot or proven a lot, going to be out there on that side of the ball. And, I know going into this game, a lot of people are talking about Jordan Pass and the quarterback and Louisville's receivers, which they have some ability on the offensive side of the ball. But to me, that is the bigger question, is how can they match up defensively with Alabama? Are they going to be able to hold their own in the front seven and keep Alabama from dominating the game and dominating possession? I think that's a real question.
Maybe in their defensive preparation, obviously Coach Saban's not going to tip his hand. He's going to play both quarterbacks, we think. And they've had time, I guess, to get ready for both. You got a left-handed thrower, and you got Jalen who can run the football. In their preparations, are they putting in game plans for both quarterbacks, depending on who's in the game? What do you know about that, Gentry?
I think you have to. I know. I think the expectation probably for most people is that Tua would get the bulk of the snaps, but you don't know that. And I think when you're playing Alabama, I mean, obviously those are different quarterbacks and they have different skill sets, but you know what Alabama's going to do. It's never really been much of a question mark under Nick Saban, even with different coordinators. They don't change things up very much. They do what they do, and they do it in a way that you're going to have to be good enough to stop it. And I think Louisville's concern is, are they good enough to stop it? Probably more than who Alabama's going to run out there at quarterback, really.
I think a big thing for Alabama is the defensive backfield. All guys are new. They have not, from my indication, not covered very well in practice. And probably you're going to see a lot of wide outs and 4 outs and 3 outs and all kind of different formations. Am I right on that, or what do you think about that?
Well, I would say, and I mean, Alabama's a huge favorite in this game, and I agree with that. But if there's one area you're looking for that you would say Louisville could have an edge, it's there. Because Louisville has a pretty good group of receivers. Des Fitzpatrick, Jalen Smith, Seth Dawkins, these guys can all play. The question is, you have a new quarterback, is he going to have time? The offensive line for Louisville has been an issue in the past. They've got some experience back that should be better. But Alabama's a different kind of test than everybody they're going to play with the exception of Clemson. And I think that, when you have Lamar Jackson for a couple of years, your offensive system is going to be what he can do. You're going to let him go do what he can do and improvise a lot of times. And that's what ended up happening, is if you had that kind of playmaker, so you just kind of had to do it that way. But I think this offense with Juwan Pass at quarterback, he's a little bit more of a traditional quarterback who I think you're going to see more of a traditional Bobby Petrino offense. I think this is going to look a lot more like what he did at Arkansas versus having somebody like Lamar Jackson up there. Now, that's good, bad, whatever. Petrino has talked this offseason about how he thinks the offense could be better, and that's one of the reasons why. I feel like he probably feels like he's going to have more control over what's going on out there because of that. And I think, with the receivers they have, I expect if Louisville's going to have any chance in this game, they're going to have to test that secondary, and they're going to have to give the quarterback time to do it.
Okay.
We're talking with Gentry Estes. Gentry, talk about their running backs a little bit. And are these guys, Alabama likes to pursue hard. Auburn hurts them with the quick, short passes, sometimes the running back dumping off to those guys. Just tell us a little bit about their running game. Are they capable of catching that little swing pass when Alabama over pursues and making big gains?
Yeah, I think so. Louisville's going to go by committee at running back. They have several guys who you're not really sure who's kind of stepped forward. They're capable at that position. I feel like they're not going to be the kind of team that has 15-play drives against Alabama. That's not going to happen. And I don't think anybody should expect they'd be able to do that. Where I think they could have the ability to hang in this game is by hitting some big plays. I expect them to probably test down the field quite a bit, more so than the dink and dunk, but if it's working, it's working.
What about the kicking game? Tell us a little bit about their field goal kicker. They get it down. How's he?
Yeah, they should be pretty good. They got guys back at specialist positions, and that figures to be a strength for their team. You would imagine.
Yep.
Is there any reason at the last meeting that Coach would say that they were going to beat Alabama? Is that to show confidence with his kids?
Well, it was one of those things. You guys know that Nick Saban he doesn't allow reporters in when he talks fan function.
Yeah,
he's always been that way, where the reporters could jump and talk to him before him, but they can't go in and hear what he says to the boosters and the people in attendance. This was one of those functions, and I think it was Bobby Petrino kind of rallying the troops a little bit. He sounded confident a few times, and I think it's more they're addressing the idea that Alabama wins games before the games even start, because everyone is intimidated or in awe or respected. So I think Louisville's kind of addressed the idea that, first off, the very first thing they need to do is believe they have a chance to win. So I think Petrino has kind of beat that drum a little more so this offseason and given some confidence, because it's just natural whether you're a player, a fan, anybody associated with the program. I mean, you're playing the national champions. You're playing the cream of the crop in college football. And, Louisville has had some decent teams the last couple of years. They were in the playoff contention a couple of years ago, and last year didn't go quite like they wanted, large part because of the defense. But, you lost the franchise. You lost your Heisman quarterback. And, everybody's looking at this and saying that Louisville is going to have a rebuilding year simply because Lamar Jackson's gone. And I think that's a fair concern if you're Louisville. So I think more than anything, they're just kind of trying to get some belief that they have a chance in this game.
Howard Snellenberger kind of got started. Howard and I were together at Alabama a long time ago, and I think he probably got Louisville on the map a little bit more. And I know there are not that many football players in the state of Kentucky. I keep up with it pretty close. But has Louisville done a decent job of getting the kids in Louisville versus Kentucky and being able to go into Ohio and getting some? How's that done recruiting-wise?
Well, you're right. You don't see the kind of talent in Kentucky. And a lot of times, if you do have that guy, you have a hard time keeping him in state. Alabama has a running back right now, Damian Harris, who grew up right near Lexington. He was a UK fan, and he still chose to go to Alabama. I think you would see the inverse in basketball sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
But I think that they've been able to recruit the area, but really, Louisville's better players have come from out of state, especially Florida. They've done a good job in South Florida. Teddy Bridgewater was from Miami, so was Lamar Jackson. Des Fitzpatrick, who, in my opinion, you'll hear a lot about Jalen Smith, but I like Des Fitzpatrick a lot. I think he's a very good receiver. He's from Michigan. So they have branched out a little bit, and I think when you're the coach of Louisville, you have to.
Yeah.
You don't have that talent base in Kentucky, and you're also, in the state of Kentucky, you're competing against UK, and Ohio State's going to dip in there and get some. Alabama's recruited some good players from Kentucky. I think Son Alexander was from Kentucky. So it's a challenge. They recruit well for what you would expect, but no, they're not. When you look at the talent of these two teams, I mean, it's a rout. When you look at recruiting rankings and just how they're going to line up.
If I had to comment to somebody what the Petrino thing was a joke, would I say that Louisville's a football atmosphere or a basketball atmosphere?
Oh, it's a basketball school.
Okay.
I don't see that changing. I think, Louisville between Louisville and UK, I do think Louisville is a little more into football than Kentucky is. They've had a little more success than Kentucky. I think some of that has to do with Kentucky's always been in the SEC where it's just so difficult. Louisville's had some success here in the last 10 years. They did real well in the Big East. They, I think changed conferences a few times now. They're in the ACC where it is tougher. They're in a division with Clemson and Florida State. And that's the hurdle they haven't – Clemson is the hurdle they haven't been able to get past. And I think I think there is more. You had a Heisman winner a couple of years ago, Teddy Bridgewater's first round pick. I mean, they've had more success. Charlie Strong at Louisville before leaving for Texas, and they've had some success at Louisville. And I think you see that reflected in the fan base. But this is a basketball school. That's not changing.
Okay,
Gentry, that line it's going down a little bit after Alabama had, I guess, a couple linebackers go down. When you see that 24.5, you're pretty familiar with Alabama. You know Louisville much better than the Alabama people. Is that line off base anywhere? You think Alabama covers it? Is that line about right in your eyes?
No, I would say it's about right. I think, Alabama isn't the kind of team that's going to go beat somebody 60-0.
I agree.
They just don't play that way. They could very easily win this game, 27-3, and it's never really in doubt, and they kind of sit on the ball in the second half, and I could see that. So, but no, I think it would take a lot of help from Alabama for Louisville to be in this game in the fourth quarter, in my opinion. I mean, turnovers, Alabama, uncharacteristic things that program's not known for doing. I think it would take that.
One of our listeners sent me. Let me ask you. He said, "What do you think about James Ramsey, John? I guess Schnattner, the Papa John's guy, Petrino and Jerk being out, and Petrino still being there. What do the people there feel about Rick Petrino now? And then is Petrino in any kind of hot water with his past? They're trying to just clean up everything at Louisville. Just talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, they've had such a rough go of it here the last couple of years in basketball that. One NCAA investigation wraps up, and they have the FBI thing that's still ongoing, cost Petrino his job. And, I feel like they made a pretty good hire in Chris Mack from Xavier, and they're trying to kind of turn the page there in basketball. Football's really stayed pretty separate from that. Petrino, his background, and he comes in, and but since he's been at Louisville, it's been pretty quiet. And on his front, and I think, really, the pressure there probably has to do more with the win-loss record. You had arguably the best player in college football the last 2 years, and the results were pretty good, but they weren't great. The program didn't take that next step. They didn't. Like I say, they weren't able to get past. They have beaten Florida State the last 2 years, actually, but they've stubbed their toe in a couple other games here and there. They lost, even with Lamar's Heisman season, they lost to Kentucky at home. They've had some results like that here and there, and I wouldn't say he's on the hot seat necessarily, but I think there's probably a little more pressure to win some games this year there. And I'll also point out that one of the coaches on the rise in college football right now, who's probably going to put himself in line for a big-time job here soon, is Jeff Brom, who's at Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jeff Brom is from Louisville. He was a high school star in Louisville. He played at Louisville. He was an assistant coach at Louisville. So I would imagine if you were to poll fan base, given what Jeff Brom has done, he had a really good first year at Purdue with a team that wasn't expected to do anything. He won 2 conference titles at Western Kentucky. A lot of people around here know who he is, and I think he's going to be sitting there. So it'll be interesting to see what plays out at both those programs.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you being on, Gentry. I think you've given us pretty much an insight to Louisville on the football side and some comments about the basketball side. Before I let you go, they changed athletic directors. The athletic director, good or bad or none of the above, left with a lot of money. A lot of money. Mm-hmm. Besides that, Rick has tried to sell his book, and they've come out and said that he wasn't accurate in his accusations about recruiting. Can you comment on those two things?
Well, I'm interested to read his book. It's coming out September 4th. Wimp, I don't know if you have a copy. If you do, send it my way.
Dick Vitale's got one.
No, I don't have one.
Oh, my Lord. Good. Dick Vitale is. Whew. He's pro Petrino now. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he got one. Jay Billis got one. We're kind of trying to get one, but I'm eager to see it. I mean, Rick has certainly not been shy about wanting to get his side out there. Whether or not you believe what he has to say, he's certainly willing to say it, and has been for a long time. And it's been an interesting situation at Louisville because these weren't, you talk about Tom Jurich, these weren't your standard people being let go here. These were guys who had a ton of success. I mean, Hall of Fame basketball coach and AD that put Louisville on the map in so many ways in different sports, and really, by all accounts, did a very good job if you just look at success. And I think it was divisive for the fan base. It was always going to be when you have that kind of situation. I think you had some fans who were just tired of all the scandals and bad publicity and that kind of thing. But I feel like in Petrino's case, I think the fans were probably ready for that by this point. But in Jurich's case, I'm not as sure that they were, and I think that it has been divisive. They've had people that big donors who've withdrawn donations and things like that. So it, like I say, this is a basketball school. So when you have something that affects the basketball program in such a way, that's where you're going to get your big backlash, and they certainly did, in a lot of different ways and a lot of different directions.
All right, Gentry, before we let you go, you want to give us a score?
No.
Oh, I said 27-3 earlier. I'd say, I think Alabama wins handily. I think something like a 35-10. I don't know, something like that.
Because good, you're making me feel. But we have a caller that says that Louisville's going to score 24. I think I said they'd get 13. And Dad, how many did you say? You said what? 10 or something like that. Everybody thinks Louisville's going to run up a big number on Alabama.
About 10.
But for you to say 10 makes me feel better, Gentry.
Well, I think if Louisville scores 20-something points, some of it's going to be scored by their defense or their special team.
Yeah.
Like I said, the only way is if Alabama makes mistakes that they would normally make in a first game, get a punt blocked or something like that.
Well, Gentry, great stuff. Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
Gentry, I appreciate it. That gives us great insight on Louisville. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.